The first time Ilara felt the ground truly hold her was the night the door slammed behind her. She stood there for a long time, her breath fogging in the cold dusk, one hand still lifted as if she might knock again. The wood of the door was worn smooth by years of use, by hands that had once been hers too, when she belonged inside. Now it looked like something foreign, something that had decided, without explanation, that she was no longer needed. "Go," her stepfather had said, voice flat as winter earth. "You're old enough." Her mother hadn't met her eyes. So Ilara went. She had no plan, no bundle tied neatly with bread and hope like in the stories she used to read by the hearth. All she had was a threadbare coat, a pair of boots too thin for snow, and a stubbornness that had been mistaken for defiance her entire life. The road out of the village was already turning to ice. She walked until the houses disappeared behind her, and the trees rose up like silent witnesses. The wind followed her, tugging at her hair, slipping beneath her coat like a thief. She didn't cry. Not then. There was something too sharp inside her chest for tears, something that burned instead of softened. It kept her moving long after her feet had gone numb. By the time darkness settled fully, she had reached the foothills where the land began to rise and fold in on itself. The forest grew denser there, the trees older, their roots gripping the earth like they had secrets to keep. She stumbled over a rock and fell to her knees. That was when the tears came. They came hard and sudden, her shoulders shaking, her breath catching as if she were choking on everything she had been holding back. The cold bit into her face, freezing the tears almost as quickly as they fell, but she didn't stop. She cried for the home she'd lost, for the warmth she'd been denied, for the way her mother had looked away. And then, slowly, the sobs faded. The forest didn't care that she was alone. The night didn't care that she was 16. The cold would not wait for her to be ready. Ilara wiped her face with the back of her hand and pushed herself up. "If I'm going to live," she said aloud, her voice trembling but steady enough, "I need a place." The idea came not as a grand plan, but as a small, stubborn thought. Find shelter. Survive the night. She moved deeper into the trees, searching for anything, a hollow log, a cave, even a cluster of rocks that might break the wind. The moon rose slowly, casting pale light across the ground, turning the world into a landscape of silver and shadow. After what felt like hours, she found it. A hill, sloping gently toward the south, its face partially exposed where the earth had eroded. The roots of a great oak stretched across it like fingers, holding the soil in place. Beneath those roots there was a shallow indentation, a place where the earth had already begun to give way. Ilara crouched, brushing away loose dirt with her hands. The soil was firm, but not impossible. The roots overhead would hold. The hill itself would shield her from the worst of the wind. It wasn't much, but it was something. "It'll do," she whispered. That night she curled into that shallow space, pulling her coat tight around her. Her body curled like an animal seeking warmth. The ground was cold, the wind still found its way in, and sleep came in brief, shivering bursts. But she didn't die. When morning came, pale and weak, she opened her eyes to a world dusted in frost. Her first winter had begun. The next days blurred into a rhythm of survival. Ilara dug. At first, it was with her hands. She scraped at the earth, breaking nails, skin splitting, fingers aching until they were stiff and swollen. She used stones to loosen the soil, sticks to pry it away. Every inch she carved out felt like a victory. The space grew slowly, a shallow hollow becoming something deeper, something that could hold her fully without her knees pressed painfully to her chest. She learned quickly that digging straight into the hill wasn't enough. The ceiling had to be supported. The walls had to be shaped, so they wouldn't collapse. She watched the forest. She paid attention. Fallen branches became her tools. She wedged them into place, creating a rough frame. She packed the earth around them, reinforcing it. The roots above helped, anchoring everything, but she didn't trust them alone. Her shelter took shape over days, then weeks. A small entrance, just wide enough for her to crawl through. A chamber inside, barely tall enough to sit upright. A floor layered with leaves and pine needles to keep her off the frozen ground. It wasn't a house, but it was hers. Food was harder. At first, she survived on what she could find, berries left clinging to frozen bushes, roots she dug from the ground, the occasional mushroom she recognized from the books she had read long ago. Hunger was a constant ache. It gnawed at her, made her dizzy, slowed her movements. She learned to conserve energy, to move only when necessary. One afternoon, she found a stream not far from her hill. It wasn't large, but it flowed steadily, its surface crusted with thin ice. She broke it with a rock, cupping the water in her hands. It was the sweetest thing she had ever tasted. The stream became her lifeline. She followed it one day, hoping it might lead to something more, perhaps a way back to people, to warmth. But as she walked, she saw tracks in the snow, not human, deer. She froze, her breath held, her heart pounding. If there were deer, there could be meat. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. She had never hunted before. She had never killed anything larger than an insect. But hunger didn't care about what she had done before. That night she lay awake in her earthen shelter, staring at the rough ceiling above her. "I'll learn," she whispered. The next morning she began. The first attempts were failures. She tried to follow tracks, only to lose them when the wind picked up. She tried to move quietly, only to snap twigs underfoot. The forest seemed to laugh at her efforts, its silence broken only by her own clumsy movements. But she didn't stop. Days turned into weeks. She grew sharper, quieter. She learned to watch the wind, to move against it, so her scent wouldn't carry. She learned to step carefully, placing her feet where the ground was softest. She learned patience. The first time she saw a deer up close, it felt like a dream. It stood at the edge of a clearing, its breath visible in the cold air, its ears twitching as it listened to the world. Elara crouched behind a tree, her heart hammering so loudly she was sure the animal could hear it. In her hand, she held a crude spear she had fashioned from a straight branch, its tip hardened in fire. She had practiced throwing it over and over until her arm ached. Now everything depended on it. She took a breath. Then another, and she threw. The spear flew not perfectly, not gracefully, but enough. It struck the deer, not where she had aimed, but enough to wound. The animal bolted, crashing through the underbrush. Elara ran after it. She didn't think. She just ran. Branches tore at her clothes, at her skin. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she didn't stop. She found it minutes later, collapsed near the stream, its breathing shallow. For a moment she hesitated. The deer's eyes met hers. There was something there, fear, pain, life. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Then she did what she had to do. That night she had meat. It wasn't cooked well. The fire she managed to build was small, fickle, but it was enough. The taste was rich, overwhelming, and she ate until her stomach ached. For the first time since she had been cast out, she felt something close to strength. Winter deepened, the snow grew thicker, the nights longer, the cold more relentless. Elara's shelter became her world. She improved it constantly, reinforcing the walls, adding layers of insulation, narrowing the entrance to keep out the wind. She created a small vent to allow smoke to escape when she dared to build a fire inside. Her hands became rough, her body lean and strong. She no longer looked like the girl who had stood at that door. She looked like something the forest had claimed. And yet, there were moments, quiet, fragile moments, when she remembered. Her mother's voice, the warmth of the hearth, the feeling of belonging. Those memories hurt more than the cold. One night, as a storm raged outside, the wind howling like a living thing, she curled into herself and let the tears come again. Why? She whispered into the darkness. There was no answer, only the storm, only the earth around her, holding her in its silent, unyielding way. Time lost meaning. Days blurred together, marked only by the slow dwindling of her food stores and the deepening cold. She hunted when she could, gathered what little the forest still offered, and endured. But winter was not done with her. The storm that came in the heart of the season was unlike anything she had seen before. It began with a stillness. The forest went quiet, the air heavy, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Then the wind came. It roared through the trees, bending them, snapping branches like twigs. Snow followed, thick and relentless, turning the world into a white void. Ilara sealed herself inside her shelter, blocking the entrance as best she could. The earth shook with the force of the storm. Snow piled against the hill, pressing in. She sat in the darkness, her knees drawn to her chest, listening. Hours passed, maybe days. The air inside grew thin, cold. Her fire had long since died. At some point she slept. Or maybe she passed out. When she woke, it was silent. Not the quiet of a calm day, but a heavy, suffocating silence. She tried to move. Her limbs felt heavy, sluggish. She crawled toward the entrance and pushed. It didn't budge. Panic flared. She pushed harder, scraping at the packed snow, her fingers numb, her breath coming fast. "Come on," she muttered. "Come on." The snow gave slightly. She dug, clawing at it, ignoring the pain, the cold, the way her vision blurred at the edges. Light broke through. She sucked in a breath of fresh, icy air, and kept digging until the opening was wide enough for her to crawl out. When she emerged, the world was unrecognizable. The forest was buried. Snow lay thick and deep, smoothing out the land, hiding everything beneath a blanket of white. Her hill was almost swallowed. If she had waited longer, if she hadn't woken when she did, she didn't finish the thought. She stood there, swaying slightly, her body weak, her mind struggling to catch up. "I'm still here," she said softly. The words felt unreal, but they were true. She was still here. The storm had taken much. It had buried tracks, hidden food sources, made hunting nearly impossible. Days became harder. Hunger returned with a vengeance. Her body began to fail her. She grew weaker, slower. The forest, once a place she had begun to understand, became hostile again. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold, Ilara stumbled. Her legs gave out, and she fell into the snow. For a moment she didn't move. It would be so easy, she thought, to just stay there, to let the cold take her. No more hunger, no more struggle, just quiet. She closed her eyes. And then, faintly, she heard something, a sound, not the wind, not the creak of trees, something else. Voices. Her eyes snapped open. She lifted her head, straining to listen. There it was again, distant but real. People. She forced herself up, her body protesting, her vision swimming. "Hey!" She tried to shout, but her voice came out as a weak rasp. She staggered forward, following the sound. Each step felt like a battle, but she kept going. The voices grew clearer. Figures appeared through the trees, blurred shapes at first, then more defined. Men, wrapped in furs, carrying tools. They stopped when they saw her. For a moment no one moved. Ilara swayed, her strength finally giving out. As she fell, she thought she saw one of them rush forward. Then everything went dark. When she woke, she was warm. The sensation was so unfamiliar, so overwhelming, that she lay still, afraid to move, afraid it might vanish. The air smelled of wood smoke. She opened her eyes slowly. She was inside a structure, wooden walls, a roof overhead, a fire crackling nearby. A blanket covered her. For a moment she didn't understand. Then memory came rushing back. The forest. The storm, the voices, you're awake. She turned her head. A woman sat nearby, watching her. You're safe. The woman said gently. Elara swallowed, her throat dry. How? We found you. The woman replied, barely conscious. Another hour and… She didn't finish. Elara nodded faintly. Others… She managed to ask. The woman's expression shifted, something heavy passing through her eyes. We searched the area, she said. There were signs, old shelters, tracks, but no one else. The words settled slowly. Elara stared at the ceiling. No one else. She was the only one who had survived that winter in the hills. A strange feeling filled her, not relief, not quite sorrow, something deeper, something that came from knowing she had faced the cold, the hunger, the endless nights, and endured. Days passed. She grew stronger under the care of the small settlement that had found her. They asked questions, but not too many. They gave her food, warmth, a place by the fire. One evening, as she sat watching the flames, the woman who had first spoken to her joined her. You could stay, she said. Elara was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked toward the window, where the distant hills were just visible beyond the trees. Her hill, her shelter, her struggle, her survival. I think, she said slowly, I need to go back, not to live, she added quickly, but to see it, to know it was real. The woman nodded. I understand. Elara stood, feeling the strength in her legs, the steadiness in her breath. She was no longer the girl who had been cast out. She was something else now, something the winter had forged. And as she stepped toward the door, toward the world beyond, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had been buried, she had been broken, she had been alone, and still she had survived.